Hi there, my name's Freya and I'm a developer at Anything World. This is part 2 of a 3-part series designed to get you up and running with the runtime scripting backend of the Anything World package. In this video, I'll be showing you how to generate habitats in runtime using just a few lines of code. We'll use the Anything Habitat module from the Anything World package available on Unity or our website anything.world. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing we need to do is go into an empty scene, set up with the Anything Setup prefab. Now what we need to do next is make a script. I'm going to call it habitat spawner, and then I'm attaching this to an empty game object in the scene. I'm going to call this, attach this script to that game object, and now we're ready to start. So once we've opened up that script in your editor of choice, if you want to delete the update function, because we won't need it for this example, and the first thing we need to do is create a reference to the instance of the Anything Habitat script. So the Anything Habitat is a singleton like the Anything Creator, and allows us to access the habitat creation functionality of the package. So if we call it, I'm going to call it habitat creator, and what you need to set it to is the anything habitat dot instance. Fantastic, that's all it is to access the anything habitat creator. So once we've defined the habitat creator, we can start accessing the habitat creation functions. So there are two main functions that we use to create habitats. So first of all, we need to access the habitat creator, and then we want to click make habitat. And you can pass in a string here. For example, I'll pass in the desert string, and that's really all you need to do. So this will instantiate the desert habitat at the beginning of runtime. So if we save that and then click play, and there we go. Habitat is spawned in. And you'll notice that there aren't any creatures in this habitat. So the next thing I'll show you is how to spawn a habitat with dynamic creatures in. So before we move on to the second part of this video tutorial, I'm going to quickly show you how the Anything World Habitat Creator works in this build of the package. Now this is subject to change, however this is how it currently works. So what the current habitat creator does is loads in a prefab that's been predefined. So if you go to the Anything World Resources, Prefabs, Environments folder, and then you can see all the different habitat prefabs that are currently defined. So if I click on the desert prefab to show you how this works, basically it allows you to predefine an object that will be loaded into a position in the environment. So this is done by creating an empty object with the anything object script set to it, and then the create in editor needs to be ticked. And here you can actually input a string, and this uses the same make object, the anything creator that we explored in the last video. And so from this, you can actually define your own environment, prefabs, and load them in at runtime. So before we move on, I'm going to show you how the habitat creation system works in the Anything World package. So the way that the make habitat function works is we find a prefab in the Anything World Resources, Prefabs, Environments folder. And these prefabs are the prefabs that are available to be requested in the make habitat function. It will look through this folder and match it to one of these prefabs and then load it into the scene. And these aren't normal prefabs, so if we go into the desert prefab, we'll just wait for it to load real quick. These aren't holding the actual models themselves in the prefab, they're holding game objects with the anything object script attached, and then these anything object scripts will load in specific habitat models at runtime using the Anything World server. If you want to define your own habitat, you can actually do that. All you need to do is create a new prefab defining a habitat using the anything object scripts attached to game objects, and then save that as a prefab in this environments folder, and then you can then call on that habitat at runtime using the make habitat function. So yeah, that's how you define your own habitat. I'll do a more in-depth video at a later stage, but for the moment we'll go back to our script. Now we're going to move on to the second part of this tutorial, which is showing you how to adjust that statement so that you can spawn in dynamic creatures into the scene when you spawn in the habitat. So if we go back into our script, our habitat spawner script, we're going to keep the habitat creator, but we're going to comment out this line, and then I'm going to type in habitat creator again, the make habitat function. We're going to use the overloaded version of the make habitat. So if we type in, I'm going to type in desert again, and then here you can see you can input a bool parameter, which is the create creature boolean. So this boolean dictates whether we want to spawn in from a list of appropriate creatures, a group of creatures into the scene. So I'm going to pass in true and save the script there. So let's see how this differs from the first time we ran this. As you can see, our scene's loading in, but instead of just the static scene objects, we're now loading in a selection of desert creatures into the scene with default behavior. Now this is not going to be useful for everything, but it's a really nice functionality to have if you know the list of creatures that you want in this scene and you just want to populate it as quickly as possible. Yeah, so as you can see, that works like that. So the habitat functionality will be being expanded. I'm going to update this video series as we go on. It's still obviously in beta stage at the moment. There will be changes in the future. But if you have any questions or queries, just send us a message. You can find our contact details on the website at anything.world. And the documentation for all these functions is at anything.world/developers. Thank you for listening, and yeah, see you next time.